Plateau State Governor Caleb Mutfwang says at least 50 people lost their lives in the attack. The governor expressed dismay over the spate of attacks and destruction of farmlands and other property by gunmen. He says from intelligence reports available to him, about 50 persons have been killed in Mangu and Bokkos in the last 48 hours. He promised to adopt stringent measures in tackling insecurity in the state. Joining us now is the governor of Plateau State, Caleb Mutfwang. Good morning, Governor Mutfwang, and thank you very much for joining us on the morning show.
Thank you, Dr. Abati and Uncle. Thank you for bringing me on set.
Well, Governor, first compliments of the season and then our commiserations on the killings during this season that is supposed to be about joy and happiness in Bokkos local government, Mangu local government, and back in Ladi. And you have correctly said this is barbaric, it is unjustified, and it's unacceptable. And you said your government is going to take steps, concrete steps, measures, you said, to make sure that this does not happen again. But this has been happening since as far back as 2009. What are those measures that your government plans to take to protect the people of Plateau State who are perpetual victims of farmer-herders clashes, ethnic, religious conflicts for years?
Thank you, Dr. Abati. You would recall that before I was sworn in, these terrorists descended on Mangu local government, where I come from, which hitherto had been one of the most peaceful in the state, and continued it in the local government of my deputy in Riom, and then, of course, Barkiladi, Bokkos. And we worked assiduously. When I saw Mr. President, he gave marching orders to the security agencies on ground, which was what brought the Chief of Army Staff, the Chief of Defense Staff, the Inspector General of Police. They all came over to the scene of the crisis on the plateau. And I would say that the collaboration did yield positive results, because you would agree that we haven't been so much in the news in the last couple of months for the reasons of this insurgency and terrorism. Unfortunately, while we were preparing for Christmas, these terrorists, these criminals descended on our people again in various communities. I regret to inform you that as at this morning, we probably have had a harvest of deaths in excess of 100. We have buried not less than 15 people in Mangu local government, and in Bokkos, it's 100 and still counting, minus those who are missing that we cannot account for at the moment. Also, not less than 17 communities have been completely burned down, and those who survived are presently in IDP, in the temporary IDP camp, particularly in Bokkos, and it's been a great tragedy. What have we done to be able to get to this point before this current crisis? We resorted to both kinetic and non-kinetic strategies. For the non-kinetic, we got into a lot of community engagements, trying to unravel remote and immediate causes of the crisis. We've been able to sit down at various levels with community leaders. And that worked. It worked to a large extent because they saw our sincerity. They saw our determination to change the narrative, that we didn't just come to have these discussions as usual, just for political correctness. We were able to get to some of the issues that really touch and affect people. But I must say that this recent action has nothing to do with farmers-herders clash, has nothing to do with religion. This is pure criminality. This is pure terrorism. This is just gruesome murder, on the eve of a revered day of remembrance. It's quite unfortunate, but we will continue these engagements and also explore other ways by which we can be able to bring the situation under control.
All right, well, thank you very much, Governor Mutfwang, and thanks for joining us on the show again. My commiserations as well to you on what has been termed a Black Christmas in your state. I'm glad you talk about the fact that kinetic and non-kinetic efforts have been made to tackle these, these attacks. However, one question that's risen is what happened with Operation Safe Haven and security agencies' response over the last few days? One would have expected that when the attacks started on the 23rd, it would have been arrested or at least curtailed before it spilled over into the next day, and it would have prevented such a number of losses of lives. What could be the explanation from the security agencies, from your point of view, with regards to this seeming lapse?
I think while there may be seeming lapse, I think the way these particular attacks were coordinated was meant to really be on a monumental scale. At a point, we had distress calls from not less than 36 communities. And even though the reinforcements, some of the reinforcements came a bit late, certainly the responses were able to push back these terrorists. That what we are having now, as bad as it is, we can even say is damage limitation. And so there are many reasons for the slow response of security agencies. Part is the channel of dissemination, part is the terrain from which these distress calls are coming. And, sometimes when you have achieved relative peace, it's natural that you can relax. And so these terrorists looked for ungoverned areas where the security deployment was a bit light or absent. And that was where they started these attacks from. And before we could be able to get the reinforcements to the right places, a lot of damage had been done. I want to be very honest that the GOC particularly, who commands both the 3rd Armored Division and the STF, I think with the kind of support he has had from the Army headquarters, he's been up and doing and making sure that the forces on ground do their job diligently. But again, we're humans. You can expect that from time to time, there could be some bit of lapses here and there. But the magnitude of these attacks, the scale on which they were planned, from the intelligence available to us, I think they were only able to achieve probably less than 20% of their intended mission.
Well, but Governor, in terms of the casualty figures, we've been having conflicting figures. You were quoted as saying about 50 people were killed. The Guardian UK, which I quoted earlier on this program, says 130 people killed, 300 injured. Daily Trust newspaper Nigeria says 150 persons were killed, hundreds were injured. Now, from reports available to you, can we have some certainty as to the number of persons that were killed, the number of persons that were injured in the 25 affected communities, the number of houses that were touched, and if you could take us through the kind of support that your government or the federal government has been providing to help the injured, to help people who are in distress, to help people whose houses have been touched by these bandits.
Thank you, Dr. Abati. At the moment, it's difficult to give you exact figures because the attacks were on until probably 10 p.m. last night. And so we are just trying to take statistics now. Quite a number of people are missing. So it will be better we wait and give you accurate figures probably much later in the day. But what I can tell you for sure, the figure of 50 I gave was yesterday when I was addressing a function of the Nigerian Army. But as at this morning, I can confidently tell you that not less than 100 people have been killed in Bokkos local government alone. At least 15 people have been buried in Mangu local government as a day before yesterday. In Barkiladi, we are still taking stock. And so at the moment, it's difficult to give you exact figures. But what I can promise you and promise Nigerians, that we will be able to give you accurate figures when we have taken full stock. There will be nothing to hide. We'll be able to tell you exactly what has happened. And in terms of what are we doing to be able to give some succor to these victims. Already we have started. Quite a number of people are in hospital, including soldiers that have been wounded. We are taking responsibility to ensure that they do not lack any medical assistance. At the moment, our highest concentration of displaced people is in Bokkos, and we have opened a temporary IDP camp where we are providing the succor we can provide in the immediate. But we must be able to do more than that. We will hope that in a couple of days, we will be able to assess some of the villages that have less impact, whether with more security presence, we can persuade the people to go back, and then so that we can concentrate on the really affected people. For us, we have activated all our emergency management apparatus, and we have also been contacted by NEMA. I think by today, NEMA will come in for an assessment of the situation, and we'll be able to harness all the assets on ground so that we can work in synergy to make sure that the victims are comforted, and then we can be able to ensure that also the security personnel on ground, that they are able to continue in pushing back these criminal elements. Because at this moment, we cannot fold our hands and think it is over. We must be on red alert, because they can spring forth from any moment with what we have seen so far.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that update with regards to numbers, and also the governor's and the government's response to the victims of this unfortunate incident. I'd like to take you back again to cause and effect. Earlier today, I talked about the fact that in many of the incidents or violent attacks in your state, it's boiled down to ethno-religious causes. So because of the how multi-diverse your state is, what are you doing? I know that when it comes to security apparatus, it's largely at the center, the federal government, so your hands are a bit limited with regards to providing security cover for the people. However, in terms of non-kinetic response, you can play a big role in this. What are some of the things you've done? Just 7 months down the line since you emerged as governor, in addressing the different ethnic groups, religious groups in your state and protecting them. And then the second thing, talk about things like engaging the youth, community-led activities, meeting with community leaders, like you mentioned earlier. And I'd like to hear some of the details of some of the things you've done to bring the people together. And then, are you concerned about reprisal attacks? Because these are some things we must also be watchful of, be mindful of how to manage the situation so as not to have, agitations or perhaps provoke reprisal attacks.
Thank you, Ayo. First, let me come on to the issue of the narrative that usually when you are looking for cause, you fall to these traditional fault lines, whether it is farmers, herders clash, or ethno-religious. How do you explain this, Ayo? You have finished slaughtering your cows and your chicken, you have prepared all your stew, you are going to bed just to celebrate Christmas the following day, and then suddenly your house is on fire, gunshots everywhere, you haven't provoked anyone. How do you relate that to these traditional explanations? It doesn't fall in. And this is the narrative that we must be able to deal with. that there are criminal elements who are terrorists. They needed to be branded as terrorists so that we can confront this elephant in the room. If we continue to fall onto these traditional explanations, we'll continue to beg the question. Now, but having said that, I can tell you that since I came on board, I have enjoyed tremendous support from both religious divides, tremendous support, and it can be verified because we have engaged them, we have been able to break fault lines, we've been able to ensure that we give people succor and comfort. In terms of deploying development, we have been able to allay people's fears about any bias on our part. I am a Christian, but I've told people consistently, my Christianity does not teach me to discriminate against people of other faiths. And therefore, in terms of the developmental efforts we have begun, we have deployed SEM even to Muslim communities, and they appreciate it. A few appointments we have made to carry people along, and they also appreciate it. So we have had these constructive engagements across the dividing lines. I have been to the Central Mosque several times in the course of my campaigns. And one of the significant things, throughout the last 8 years, the Muslims were never allowed to use the stadium for their Eid al-Maulud. We opened up the stadium for them free of charge. They were so happy. And I can tell you just last week, Wednesday, the Muslim community on the Plateau gathered in the Central Mosque to pray for me concerning some of the travels I'm going through. So we've been able to break fault lines. And we are continuing with this, with these engagements, so that we conscientize people on the need to live together. None of us can chase the other person away. Therefore, we must be able to come together and see that we have a collective destiny. This is the message we have preached, and we are continuing to preach. At every forum, we have continued to sound out this message, that if you are a lover of Plateau, you are my brother, you are my sister, irrespective of your faith, irrespective of your gender, irrespective of your ethnicity. And we have continued to work to give everybody a sense of belonging. And that's why we've been able to achieve some relative peace. But this caught us on the blind side. We thought we were going to celebrate the Christmas peacefully without knowing it. At a point, the military told me they had distress calls from 36 different points at the same time. This can be quite monumental to handle logistics-wise. And that could be part of the explanation for the lethargy in response.
Well, Governor, since this tragedy occurred, have you been able to reach out to President Tinubu, and what level of support are you getting from him or the federal government? Briefly, as we begin to wrap up now.
Thank you, Dr. Abati. Yes, I should be getting to the president later today because we needed to get our facts right so that we can be able to give him a very informed position. And I'm confident. I told you NEMA is responding. The Army headquarters has responded. The IG has also responded. They are sending more reinforcements. But I'll be briefing the president more adequately in the course of the day.
Thank you very much, Governor. Thank you for joining us.